Ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, folks. Welcome to 1950 Radio Amateur's Handbook, Chapter 3, Vacuum Tube Principles. My knowledge about vacuum tube principles is zero all the way across the board. I'm just showing you what's in the 1950s Radio Amateur's Handbook and trying to learn the basics myself. I strongly recommend looking up a video, perhaps Periscope films on YouTube on vacuum tubes. There's a lot of them. And these are original films back from the 50s and 60s, and that's where this information is coming from. I recommend that for you and me. Even though vacuum tubes may be old technology by today's standards, they were and still are quite amazing electronic devices. As in the first paragraph, it says the tube is used to generate radio frequency power, to amplify it in transmitters, to amplify and detect weak radio signals picked up from distant stations, to magnify the human voice, to change alternating current into direct current for power supplies. In fact, to do innumerable things that without it could not be done. So they start off with diodes and rectification, and that is why I was recommending a video from Periscope Films on vacuum tubes.
Tubes and their components can be identified or marked on diagrams. This is the cathode. This is the anode or plate. This symbol is used for a grid. And this one identifies the heater or filament. This symbol identifies a diode. This is a triode. This is a tetrode. And this is a pentode.
Why do they call it a vacuum tube? Well, as this section says, it's current in a vacuum. The outstanding difference between vacuum tube and most other electrical devices is that the electric current does not flow through a conductor, but through empty space. How do you say that word? Kitty cat, get away. Thermionic emission is when a thin wire or filament is heated to incandescent in a vacuum. Electrons near the surface are given enough energy of motion to fly off the surrounding space. The higher temperature, the greater the number of electrons emitted. A more general name for a filament is a cathode. And here's some little diagrams of a cathode. They're little drawings. Those are cathodes, my friend. So I guess in the old radio gear that has vacuum tubes, like the Hammerlands or the Hallicrafters, tube radios, you got to turn them on, let the cathodes heat up, let that electron flow start before they're stable. Otherwise, they'll tend to drift. I think that's kind of what's going on here with this radio electronics jazz from the 50s. Here's a really nice little diagram, hand drawn, of course, 1950s style, where they're showing the heater or the cathode and the plate. Electrons are attracted to the plate by this whole way of doing things. So the current flow is this way. What's a plate? This is a plate. Right there. So here's the cathode, here's the plate. Heat, 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 electron flow. The number of electrons attracted to the plate depends on the strength of the positive charge on the plate. As you can see, there's a positive charge on the plate. So here's a diagram kind of showing what the term saturation is. And I think this is important because I think this has something to do with when I started out in ham radio or transmitters and transceivers, we had to tune the transmitter. And I think saturation is probably part of why we do it. It says here, figure 3.3 shows a typical plot of plate current with increasing plate voltage for a two-element tube or diode. A curve of this type can be obtained with circuit shown. If the plate voltage can be increased in small steps and a current reading taken using a millimeter. I believe that's milliammeter CLG. Voltage. The plate current is zero with no plate voltage, and the current rises almost straight line until saturation is reached. I'm just guessing so that perhaps when we tune our transmitters, when we're peaking them, we're kind of going for up to here, and beyond that, this is a waste of time, I think. I don't know. And here's another little diagram of rectification. Here's AC current, here's DC current, I believe. Rectification in the diode current flows only when the plate is positive with respect to the cathode. So only half cycles of current flow through the load resistor, which is this. So, ladies and gentlemen, tune in next time for vacuum tube amplifiers on the 1950s Radio Amateur Handbook by your pal, CLG. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen.